Today I wanted to talk a little bit, just for a few minutes, about the idea of protecting children and how important that is. I know that those of you who've been following my story know that that's very near and dear to my heart, but there have been some people who have asked me in recent weeks and months, why don't you just get divorced with all the things you've been through, not being able to touch your own wife for 3 years, just all the snarkiness and sarcasm and coldness and narcissism and passive aggressiveness. Like, why not just move on? It's hyper abusive. There's people who will respect you and care about you a lot. He'll be civil. Move on. And while I certainly appreciate the well wishes for my life to be filled with love and good things, I think it's really important to emphasize, for me, and this is going to look different from everybody, how you flesh this out, but for me, the priority is definitely protecting my children. And this goes back a little bit to, even my own childhood. When I was growing up, my dad was a Christian school teacher, and my mom was mostly a stay-at-home mom, though she was also a nurse. And she eventually, as we got older, got back into nursing. But I remember my dad, when I was a kid, he just had huge anger issues. I mean, off the charts anger issues. He would rage and rage and rage, mostly against my mom. And my mom was a lovely person, is a lovely person. My dad's passed now, but my mom is still here, and just we build in that relationship. But she was a lovely mom growing up, and I'm sure she made mistakes like we all do, but she did not deserve anything like the bizarre abusiveness that she got from him. And I remember many nights, I mean endless, countless nights as a kid, sitting at the top of the stairs, listening to my parents in the kitchen, listening to him just berate her, just verbally beat the shit out of her. And I remember as a young boy, 4, 5, 6 years old, just sitting there at the top of the stairs listening to it all. They, I'm sure, thought we were all asleep and in bed. But I was hypersensitive to those things, to the woundedness that was actively happening to my mom at my dad's verbal hand, so to speak. And I wanted so much as a kid to do something to stop the abuse, to ease the pain for my mom. And of course, as a young kid, there's not much you can do. There were a few times when I would come downstairs, all the way downstairs, so that they saw me and heard me, and I'd just say, I really need a cup of water, a cup of milk. But you can't do that every night. And so there were many nights where I'd just sit at the top of the stairs, somewhat helpless and hopeless, because, this godly man, this man who was, teaching kids the Bible all week and preaching in a lot of churches on Sundays, this man who was guiding me to memorize literally thousands upon thousands of Bible verses, this man who would put on Christian radio programs for hours at a time. It was just like the background noise. Like, some families have nice music on, some families have the TV going, even if you're not watching, it's just in the background. My family would have on old time gospel preachers, and family radio, if you're familiar with that, family radio out in California, and these good old time, Oliver B. Green kind of people, the old time gospel preachers, people that are at this point long since dead. But that was the environment. Looking at him with all of this Christian stuff going on, but every night, most nights, like clockwork, tearing my mom to shreds verbally. I don't know the depths of the abuse that was going on, but I know what I heard, and that there was at least that going on, and it broke my heart. And when you look at that dynamic of a little child observing a home where people are being abused, your heart can't help but break for that child, for those children. There were four of us growing up. Your heart can't help but break for those children. But you and I both know that if my mom had just divorced, and if it had been a 50-50 split, my dad would have absolutely taken his anger out on us kids, and he did in part. He very, very much did. To the point where even as a teenager, he told me he wished I'd never been born, and he told me several times to get out of his house and never come back. And it wasn't like there was a real issue. It was things that he had to be in control. He was very much a control person, and if he didn't have control, he was just angry at that. And he did express a lot of his anger, but my mom in some ways took the brunt for us, and I'm aware of that, and I feel horrible for her. And I did later in life when I was a teenager, when we were all old enough that that kind of verbal abuse couldn't be easily inflicted because we're old enough to understand it. I heavily encouraged my mom to separate, at least to separate, because at that point, two or three of us were, in college or above. There was one more that was headed to college soon. There wasn't as much chance for that damage, and so at that point, I insisted, like, Mom, you got to leave this guy. He's not a husband to you. He's not a friend to you. Just the bare bones basics of a romantic life or of a friendship, of a roommate. He's not doing that for you. And she chose not to, which is, her choice. But when I look at that, she, in our younger years, took the brunt for us. I don't know if she did it with the thought of she could separate, but she has to stay for us. I don't think in her situation, in her church situation, that divorce was looked upon in any way as a reasonable option, unless there's heavy affairs going on. If it's just emotional abuse, whatever, back in that day, churches didn't preach that was an acceptable reason to consider separation or divorce, at least in the circles I was in. And so it wasn't really a big option. But I know that still in the big picture, she did bear the brunt for us of a lot of this stuff. And some of it was truly horrific. I mean, there were nights I can still remember it like it happened yesterday, where he was just being so angry at her that the level of yelling was so loud that they went down to the basement to just put another floor of distance between the kids sleeping and them. And it was just, I mean, you probably easily could have heard it half a block away from the outside of the house. It was nastiness, like pure nastiness, and it broke my heart. Years later, my mom and I did get closer in the sense that I kind of had that emotional component, reaching out, just caring about what she'd gone through, and we had many long conversations privately just to say, like, Mom, how are you doing? Are you taking care of your heart? Are you okay? This has been a really rough road for years. How are you doing? And I became a bit of a sounding board for her for a period of time. But again, going back to the earlier years, there's no doubt in my mind that he would have aimed his anger much more heavily at us kids if it hadn't been for my mom's presence. When I look at my current situation, I understand the exhortations from people to say, move the hell on. It's clearly over. You can't even touch the girl. For goodness sake, you can't touch her. She won't say good morning. She won't say good night. She won't say, how are you doing? How's your day? It is not civil. It is beyond eggshells. And sorry if you hear my dogs lapping up water in the background. Sorry if you hear that. But this is really bad from marriage perspective stuff. But when I look at the damage that could happen to the children, when I look at the ways that the kids could be facing much more abuse, both direct abuse verbally, as well as abuse physically, as well as for sure abuse psychologically with the Christianity garbage, there's no doubt in my mind no doubt in my mind that I need to step up to the plate for my kids. Um, yeah, I I want the real deal. I want romance. I want love. I want intimacy. Who doesn't? But not at the cost of my children's hearts. Um, there will be a day when, hopefully, that stuff will take more of a front and center part of my life, center stage. I can't wait for it. I mean, I think about it, I daydream about it. And if you've seen my recent romantic ASMR, that's where I live. I live in a romantic, intimate, affectionate spot in my mind nonstop. That's just constantly where I'm at. I ache for touch. But there's something bigger going on. There's something much bigger going on here. Children are vulnerable. When children are vulnerable, when children have so much woundedness that has happened and that could still happen, at that point, to me, it's a simple equation. There's no way in the world I will do anything to in any way give abusers more bandwidth to hurt my kids. And even if the physical abuse that's happened, that's currently ceased, if it still ceases, the psychological abuse is still massive. Telling kids on a daily basis, you're a sinner, you deserve to go to hell for your sin, God is judging you, God is angry at you. So many things like that that just don't stop. They never stop. There's just so much messaging that's toxic that continues on a daily, hourly basis to go to the kids because of this Bible prison stuff. And I am capable, from the proximity that I'm at with them, the interactions that I have with them every day, I am very capable of doing immense undoing to all that damage. Some of the things I've done, I've talked about. Some of it is extremely stealthy, to the point of like sign language, a private sign language that goes on between me and the kids. You know, there are little messages that go back and forth that are private between me and the kids that allow me to quickly and simply and almost invisibly undo all the damage. That's priceless to me. I can and in a sense, you become very dangerous to Christianity. Um, you can look at people who have been exposed to church and the Christian teachings, in so many ways for so long, for years. Someone like me, I can come in and I can undo years worth of damage in 15 minutes. I can undermine it heavily in minutes. And when you say, well, put that in the perspective of consistently every single day, you can undo the damage. I can mitigate it to the point that a whole bunch of the religious trauma that we all talk about, my kids won't have it. Now, they will have trauma from realizing their parents had a huge issue with each other because of the religious differences. They will have trauma to realize we should have seen mom and dad, holding hands and hugging and being loving and laughing and joking. That's real and that's painful. And I do a lot to talk about and help them understand what loving parents should look like and what they can look forward to with their future spouses as they make wise decisions. But in terms of the religious stuff, which is, as we all know, it's huge. It's huge. This whole shame issue. You deserve to be ashamed of yourself. You can't trust yourself. You shouldn't feel safe in your own body. The flesh is warring against the spirit. All this dualism stuff. So many levels of it that we talk about. My kids are in many ways not going to face that because they literally can say to me, Daddy, we know it's not real. They're almost like jokingly say, Daddy, you don't have to protect our minds anymore. Like, we know it's not real. We know this is pretend. We know it's make-believe. It doesn't make any sense. I do still protect their minds very consistently, but it's getting to a point, at least with the older 2 or 3, that it's really clear. Like, it's really clear. They get it that this is mythology. They get it that they don't have to believe, and they get it that at some point this is going to become utterly irrelevant to their lives. It's beautiful. It's beautiful in many ways. But it only happens because I'm right there. I'm right there on the front row of all this damage. And it's just like a one for one. You try to hurt their minds, I undo it. It's like, somebody would, if they scrape you or scratch you with, sandpaper or a razor, bam, I'm right there with the salve and the antibiotic ointment and the Band-Aid and the wrap. I'm right there. The minute you inflict the pain, I'm there to help heal it. That's what's going on a daily, hourly basis in my home. Yes, the lack of all the good stuff, intimacy and affection, that's crazy stuff, crazy town, cuckoo bananas. I can't believe it. It's in some ways it's like, how in the world can that be your real life? Yes, but that's not the big picture. That is not the big issue here. The big issue is children need to be protected, heavily protected from the bad stuff. Um, that's my passion. I do understand that there are some of you for whom that is going to look differently. Some of you are going to say, well, if you protect kids, you need to get divorced. I've heard people say that. And every situation is going to be different. From where I'm standing, and I would utterly respect it if someone else said, I am protecting my kids, but the best way to protect them is to get divorced. That was my protection, But if the abuser gets 50-50 access or better from their perspective, then to me, that's not a path I'm willing to take. I'm only willing to take a path in which I get consistent access to protect their hearts and minds and bodies. So I want to say first, thank you for the people that have expressed concern. I know many people have over the last few months and even years expressed concern, expressed heartache with me, said, very positive messages of we think you deserve better. We're so sorry. We hope it, clears up at some point and gets to be more positive and hopeful. And either way, even if it's not this one, hopefully at some point, there's love in your life, romance in your life, affection and intimacy, all just the things that, the best things in life are free kind of stuff. We hope you get back to that at some point. So thank you for those of you who've sent such messages many times. It helps, it helps to know that there's people saying, you're not crazy. You deserve better. It definitely helps to know that I'm not, I'm not just making it up. This is, and that's part of, I think, the Christianity stuff is like, you deserve to be so mistreated. Like you don't deserve anything. You don't deserve anything good. You're such a wicked person. And even though we're past that theology, of course, and that worldview, that mythology, it still is like part of our psyche a little bit, just how we operate. You kind of feel like if something really bad happens to you, you must have deserved it. But I do send a lot of messages, not just to the kids, but to myself, positive messages saying, yeah, you do deserve better. Not in this religious sense of deserving, but just, in terms of, being a human, being a better human than you were yesterday, and hopefully in a trajectory of being healthier and less toxic every day. You're making wise choices, so you deserve to be experiencing good things. You're a safe person and you're a loving person. Those kind of people should have, safety and love returned to them. But my passion is for kids. I remember my own story, the story I just shared earlier about me being at the top of the stairs. I can still see my little face, from like pictures. I can see my face, or from the mirror, I can see my young face and think, little Tim, you went through so much heartache. And when my mom got beat up verbally, it was like I got beat up verbally. I took it very personally. And I took very personally the fact that I couldn't protect her. That ate me alive. I could not do almost anything to stop it and to shield my mom from these things. There's a burden a kid shouldn't have to bear, but at the same point, there's a natural human desire, even as a kid, to protect those you love, including your parents. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do much to protect my mom, and I wish I could have. I don't regret anything I did. I was very concerned and sensitive. There's just so much a kid can do. But when I look at that young child, I think, you were so vulnerable. You were so vulnerable, and you needed somebody to step up and protect your mom. You needed someone to step up and protect you. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. In many ways, fortunately, I think I responded well to some of it, in that I I just became more sensitive. That whole sense of like when life's going bad and there's emergencies, look for the helpers, look for the healers. From the earliest days, I wanted to be one of those people. I wanted to be a helper and a healer. That was a good outcome of this. I was sensitive to people's pain. Even my mom, she used to tell me stories. She'd say, there'd be parties where everybody's having fun, everybody's eating a piece of cake. And she'd say, you would just sit there and scan the room. You just look at everybody like you were studying people. And she'd say, you'd find somebody who was clearly having a really rough struggle with something. And nobody else was focused. Everyone else was laughing and hooting and hollering and having a party. But you were scanning for the pain, the people in pain. She said I did it over and over. I would keep on scanning for the people in pain. And I would go find them. And I'd say, I can see you're having a rough day, or something's on your heart. I care about you. Just want to let you know I'm sorry for whatever you're going through. I care about you. She told me I did that even from before memories I can remember. She said as a young kid I would do that. And if I ever put my foot in my mouth and said something that hurt someone, it just cut me to shreds. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the wounder here. I just hurt somebody. And I'd bend over backwards to make it right, almost, too much. But when I look at such sensitivity in a kid, and you think other kids have sensitivities too in different ways, but the sensitivity, at least to their own woundedness, to their own weakness and vulnerability, and the need for someone to say, I will stand up for these vulnerable children. I will stand up for these kids who don't have a way to really have a voice. Their autonomy is being removed daily, and they need someone to put it back. Their ability to be free from horrific mythological ideas has been removed. You need someone to give them that freedom of thought again, to say you don't have to believe this stuff. You can just learn where it came from and then make up your own mind what you want to do with it. No threat of hell. If you don't believe, you don't believe. End of story. It's okay. That freedom is removed systematically from them by my wife, and I systematically put it back daily. To me, that's worth its weight in gold. That is what my life right now is all about. I will continue to daydream about romance and intimacy, flirtation, dancing together, holding someone's hand. That stuff is not going to stop. That's who I am. But my priority is the weakest ones, the children, the vulnerable ones. And I do want to encourage you, whether you're already divorced or thinking of a divorce, moving through a divorce, separation, all the options on the table, please take this exhortation to heart. The most important piece of your life is not your fulfillment. The most important piece of your life is not what you need to be self-actualized. The most important piece of your life right now, if you have vulnerable children, is the vulnerable children. I know that Christianity calls us all to be willing to be martyrs, so to speak, to be willing to sacrifice ourselves for the Lord and for the kingdom. And that when we leave Christianity, we're like, I don't have to sacrifice myself. I can be selfish. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean we have to go to an extreme where we say, I still don't have to ever sacrifice. I still don't ever have to put myself second or third. I don't have to rank myself below other people. No, I am still a servant. I'm not a servant of Christ, and I'm not a servant of the church. I'm not a servant of mythology, but I am a servant in the sense, not a slave like the Bible talks about, but I'm a servant in the sense that I serve. I do serve the best interest of other people. And the best interest of the most important people in my life right now is my kids and their hearts and minds. I serve them. And I would not ever want to give up that privilege of being constantly focused on what is in their best interest. If you're in such a situation, please just give it a thought. I'm not judging you for taking a different path than I would. We're all going to go down different routes, and there's no way you can know everything in my story. There's no way I can know everything in yours. And that's fine. We need to be able to say, you take a different route, I take a different route. We don't judge each other for it. But I hope you can hear my passion and my plea. Kids, kids that are in your charge in some level. If children are in your charge, their safety and security and autonomy and the ability to thrive far outranks yours. You still need to thrive, because the more you thrive, the more you can help them thrive and be a good example for them, yes. But if there's some direct way where your choice to thrive for you leads to an immediate lessening of thriving for them, they come first. Absolutely. 100 out of 100 times, they come first. There will be a day for selfishness that's much more intensely focused on you and me. That day will come, and I can't wait for it. Trust me, I can't wait for it. But we have a privilege for just a few, it's a cliche, they grow up so fast. And life isn't going to slow down for us. But when you look back at this, what are you going to be most proud of? Are you going to be most proud that you moved on and found a new love? Are you going to be most proud that you focused on, getting away from the abuser? Are you going to be most proud that you kept the children from abuse? For me, the answer is simple. I hope some of that helps. I hope some of it resonates. I understand that in some ways I'm oversimplifying it, because there's a lot of different variations and nuances that come into these equations, and someone else is going to make a different choice, and for good reason, and that's okay. And I certainly respect that. But I hope I'm still making some good points for those of you who are going through this. My heart just aches for kids. My kids deserve so much better. They deserve especially to see parents that love each other, that are loving and caring and laughing. There's no laughter in our home, at least between the parents. There's laughter with me and the kids, but there's no laughter between the parents. There's no holding hands. They never see one parent come up and give the other a hug, or a quick back massage, or a quick kiss. It never happens. It's been so long since it happened that my kids can't remember it. It's been years since they saw it. They don't remember what it looks like. They deserve better. But top of my mind is they deserve to be protected so that their future is as bright. I don't need them to have just memories of your mom and dad hug each other. I need them to have memories of, we had our most basic human autonomy sheltered and empowered. I'll sacrifice for that any day. Thanks for listening.